Hey, this is Notser, and today we're taking a look at 0.9.2 on the public test server. We're checking out Slingshot being removed, HE penetration rule change, IFHE nerf, cruiser armor buff, battleship armor adjustment. Hopefully you guys enjoy. First things first, Pan-European Early Access comes out. There'll be directives for it. There's going to be a brand new port, Fjords. It looks beautiful. Clearly, it looks beautiful. And obviously the Tirpitz, right at home. Hopefully there won't be some British aircraft that's going to try and bomb me into oblivion here. Gosh, that's never happened before. But yeah, obviously, very cool. And yes, the Tirpitz does belong in a fjord. Looks very nice. Let's show examples of everything I talked about. So, aircraft carriers. You should see something on screen right now showing the dive bomb protocol in 9.2. In 9.1, you would drop your bomb, you would exit with an immune frame, you would regain control, and then within 2 or 3 seconds after that, you could redrop, or 4 seconds after that, you could redrop. That's the amount of time that you needed to regain the ability to click and aim. And what people would do is they would drop and then immediately go into another drop, and they would use a portion of that first drop to make them immune to AA damage and force themselves on their target. Wargaming has now put an 8.5 second rearm or re-aim into the drop. So when you exit the immune frames after a drop, you will now have to spend 8.5 seconds before you can click again. So obviously that is a long time to add on to being able to aim again, and that kills Slingshot. You have to drop so far away and fly for so long that you can't benefit from the immune frames. So, dead and buried, sayonara, thank you, don't miss it, and it does apply to all American, Japanese, and British. I haven't seen it on the Zeppelin, and I heard that maybe the Indomitable will be immune to it, but everyone else, you can no longer do that Slingshot. Okay, so HE penetration is a significant discussion, and one that we should get to. So HE penetration right now is less than. In 9.2, the rule is going to change to less than or equal to, and it will give you equivalently 1 penetration more of millimeter penetration that you can use in your gun caliber. The Daring is notorious for being one of those that lost out on this rule in the old version, because it had 18 millimeters of penetration. 18 is not good, because it's not 19. You need, at the bare minimum, 19 to equal tier pen DDs. So people would invest in IFHE. Now you don't need that. You get 19 baked because of that extra pin. The extra pin that's always been there, but it's always had to be less than, but now it's less than or equal to. So now you don't need IFHE. And now you can take something like basic firing training, demolition expert, adrenaline rush, superintendent. You can do whatever you want. I was a 3 level 4 guy, and that's obviously super exciting. So I think everyone should be really happy for the Daring. The GK also benefits. It gets 32 millimeters baked in instead of 31 millimeters, so it doesn't need IFHE. So you get all that nice fire chance and that pen for basically free, and that's great. And I'm loving it on my GK. Love the buffs on secondary. Where the rule obviously doesn't have as big of an impact is like the heavy cruisers. I mean, 34. Whoa. 33 to 34. Woo. Don't cross any significant thresholds there. So, for some, it's very significant. For others, it's inconsequential. It doesn't matter. Let's talk about IFHE's impact. So, IFHE is now going to do the following. 30% for tiers 8, 9, and 10, instead of just 30% base, HE penetration increase. Tiers 1 through 7 will get 25%, but all tiers will deal with losing 50% of their HE shell fire chance. This is before modifiers are applied. Demolition expert and signal flags are immune to this effect, effectively. So what ends up happening is I played through all these with or without, and in my opinion, the Harugumo, the Akizuki, and the Kitakaze still need it, and they just have to compensate by taking demo. In every ship line that I suggest they still need it, they basically have to compensate by taking demo. So whenever you take IFHE now, you have to couple it with that. So it's a 7-point investment, whereas in the previous version, you could probably get by because it was only 1 or 3 fire reduction. But 50% is way more than 1 or 3%. For example, in the previous version, I would take basic fire training, so I would have faster reload, and I would also be able to pin everything, and it was monster. But the base pin of 25 is just not good enough to deal with cruisers, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of cruisers. So you need to get it up over that threshold. It is still a significant threshold to cross for the Harugama, the Kitakaze, and the Akizuki. Where it is not a significant threshold to cross anymore is the Wooster, because the Wooster got the 1/5 rule instead of 1/6, so it takes the gun caliber, divides it by 1/5 instead of 1/6, and that's where you get the pin. And for the Wooster, that sets it at 30 millimeters of penetration, which is amazing. And that turns IFHE into literally deciding if you want to cross the 32 millimeter threshold and the 38 millimeter deck armor of American battleships. Now, it's worth a conversation and whether you do it or not. And in my experience, as long as you take demo and you put the signal flags on, you will probably only lose 1 to 3 fires in a game. And that could be down to firing on ships that already are set on fire. So that's within the margin where it's like, okay, is it better? Is it worse? It's so close. So I think that it's 50-50 at this bracket. Light cruisers here can decide for themselves whether they want it or not, and it is beneficial, but is it as beneficial as maybe the fires would? And do I really need to? Because I can pin so many by default. I could spend those points on something else entirely. I don't even need to go into Demolition Expert. Maybe I go into radiolocation and do some radiolocation radaring, or I don't know, extra level 2 skill. That's a total possibility for light cruisers at this bracket. The Des Moines and the Salem got 30 millimeters of armor, and everyone thinks this is crazy, but literally every other heavy cruiser has 30 millimeters, so they were just matching them. And they want tier 10 heavy cruisers to have a bare minimum of 30 millimeters of armor. Where they don't want bare minimum 30 millimeters of armor is the super lights in the Colbert and the Smolensk. Now they only have 16 millimeters in the center of the ship, so the Smolensk definitely feels this huge nerf. And it's just going to be squishy, like the Minotaur. Yeah, there might be a little overpin and perfectly broadside point-blank range, but from literally every other shot, it'll go in and it'll do damage instead of ricocheting. And that is going to be so much better for a lot of different people. Hindenburg. Would you use IFHE on the Hindenburg? You tell me. 66 millimeters, though, but we have 10.5% fire chance, and that is with signal flags and Demolition Expert compensation. So if I wasn't doing that, it would have 7.5% fire. That is very significant. That is a lot of fire lost. And it's even worse for something like the Henri. The Henri loses, it goes from 24 to 12, and I had to compensate back with 3%. So I go from 24 to 15, and I can't get any higher. But I do get the 52 millimeters, or the 50 millimeters of pin that I'm looking for. It's just the fire chance. Literally 50% less fires in games. That's what it ends up being in a lot of instances. So it's like, is it worth that? I don't know. 180 millimeter, a little bit more significant. Used to always just blindly take IFHE because it was a really small penalty, but now it's a big penalty. You start with 30 millimeters of pin, so you have the same question as a light cruiser like a Wooster. Is this cool? Is this good? Do I need the pin? And I start out, I think, with like 13% fire, and now it's 6.5. And so I need to take demo, and I need to take signal, and it'll get up to 9, but it's still not 13. That's a big drop in percentage fire. So I think that for me, for the 180 millimeter bracket, I'm not going to take IFHE because that's bordering into, I'm losing too much fire at that point. So that's the IFHE from the higher tier ships. Let's talk about tier 7 because there is armor changes. The battleships will have 26 millimeters instead of 27, and that is to allow ships like the Atlanta the possibility of speccing into IFHE. having 25% pin instead of 30 be useful to pin 26 millimeters, but not 27 and not 32. So that is supposed to allow for the choice to be on their tiers, and for the higher tiers to have a greater advantage than they've ever had. You might remember that 152s at tier 7 could pin 32 millimeters, but now they can only pin 31. So that's what Wargaming wants to try and emphasize a little bit more, is the differences between tiers 7 and 8, or tiers 7 and 9. I think that is something that, obviously, that is, yeah, that's a big thing for battleships. That should allow them to be more resilient to incoming, and I think that overall this means that battleships feel like they are worth more. Cruisers have to make a tougher choice, and we all win because we don't have to deal with Slingshot anymore, and the choices that are being made are more significant, and they're not going to be taken lightly, and it's not just a straight buff. I think that that's good for the game. I think that hopefully the armor and the cruiser battleship relationship will encourage more open combat, because I want the game to be more up-tempo, not as much camping and hiding and existing in your own bubble, but more being out there and playing as a team and using your armor to withstand punishment and dish it out. I think that's the fun version of the game, so I'm hoping for that. So that was 9-2. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to check out more of my content, you can click the most recent or the most relevant uploads. You can also choose to subscribe to my channel. We do daily World War videos, first impression, how-to, news, and review related. My North American recruit invite is on the screen. You can take advantage of that. I stream at twitch.tv/Notser. Thank you, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.